Alright, let's talk about one of the hardest kinds of heartbreak. Not the kind where someone cheated, not the kind where someone lied, not the kind where someone became abusive, manipulative, or cruel. I'm talking about the kind where two people genuinely loved each other and it still doesn't work. I think that's the kind of breakup people understand the least. Because we're almost conditioned to believe every relationship has to end with a villain. Someone has to be the bad guy. Someone has to be blamed. Someone has to screw up everything so we can point a finger at them and say, that's why it ended. But life isn't always that simple. Sometimes there isn't a bad guy. Sometimes there are just two good people trying their absolute best, and life still finds a way to win in the worst way. Long distance relationships especially have a way of teaching you that. People who've been in one sometimes think it's easy. Oh, just text more, call more. If you really loved each other, you'd make it work. If only it were that simple. Because here's the thing about long distance relationships. You don't just miss someone once. You miss them every single day. Every holiday, every birthday, every terrible day at work where all you wanted was a fucking hug. Every great day where all you wanted was to celebrate together. You don't get little moments most couples never even think about. No random kiss before work. No holding hands while walking through the grocery store. Watching a movie without counting the time difference. Falling asleep next to the person you love. Instead, you count time zones. You count days until the next visit or even the first visit. You count down the minutes until you know they're awake. Eventually, sometimes, you start counting everything you're missing. That doesn't mean the love disappears. That's what makes it so painful. Because people assume relationships end when love dies. Sometimes love is the last thing to leave. Sometimes it's still sitting there. Sometimes it will always sit there, looking you directly in the eyes, where everything around you is slowly falling apart. You still smile when their name pops up on your phone. You still care how their day went. You still want them to be happy. You still imagine what your future could have looked like together. And at the same time, you're exhausted. Not because they did something wrong, because loving someone from thousands of miles away, it's emotionally expensive for both people. It takes patience, trust, communication, sacrifice, hope. Sometimes, even when both people are giving it everything they've got, the relationship starts demanding more than either person has left to give. That's a brutal realization, because now you're stuck asking yourself a question nobody wants to answer. Can somebody be absolutely incredible and still not be the right person for me right now? The answer is yes. And that's heartbreaking. Because people hear that and think it means the relationship wasn't real. That's fucking bullshit. Some of those most real love you'll ever experience can still end. The ending doesn't erase everything that came before it. It doesn't erase the laughter, the late night phone calls, the inside jokes that nobody would fucking understand. The dreams you built together. The moment where one voice on the other end of the phone made your entire day better. Those things happened. They're real. They mattered. Love isn't measured by whether it lasts forever. Sometimes it's measured by how deeply it changes you while it was still there. One of the hardest things about a healthy breakup is your brain keeps trying to convince you to find a reason. There has to be somebody to blame. There has to be a mistake. There has to be something that we could have fixed. Sometimes there isn't. Sometimes both people communicated. Both people tried. Both people sacrificed. Both people loved each other with everything they had. And eventually, the relationship became more painful than peaceful. That sentence hurts so much to say out loud because nobody wants to admit that the person they love is also connected to pain. Not intentional pain, not malicious pain, just the pain of distance, the pain of uncertainty, the pain of waiting, the pain of missing somebody every single day, the pain of wondering when life will finally let you stop living through a screen. Love can survive distance, but sometimes people can't. Not forever. We're freaking human. We are built for connection, for touch, for shared experiences, for sitting beside someone completely silent and somehow saying everything without speaking a single word. A phone call, it can't replace that. A video call can't replace that. Neither person failed because they needed more. They were simply being human. And I think that's what hurts the most. You look at this amazing person, someone you still admire, someone you still respect, someone you still love with every fiber of you. And you realize, I can't keep doing this. Not because they're a bad person, because the relationship itself has become heavier than your heart can carry. People often say, if it's real love, you'll fight for it. And I agree. You should fight for love. But there's another question nobody asks. What happens when you've already been fighting for so long? At what point does fighting become surviving? At what point are you no longer protecting the relationship, but simply refusing to let it die because you're terrified of what comes next? Sometimes letting go isn't quitting. Sometimes it's accepting reality. Reality is a cruel motherfucker sometimes. Love doesn't solve every problem. Love can't eliminate distance. Love cannot create money for plane tickets. Love cannot pause careers. Love cannot magically erase immigration laws. Love cannot guarantee perfect timing. Sometimes people meet at exactly the wrong chapter of their lives. Not because they were wrong for each other, because life wasn't ready for them. That thought, it's both comforting and devastating, because it leaves you with no one to hate, no one to blame, just grief. Grief is strange. You don't just mourn the relationship, you mourn the future, the vacations you imagined, the apartment you talked about, the family photos that will never exist. The ordinary Tuesday nights that somehow became extraordinary simply because you picture them together. You grieve a life that only ever existed in your imagination. That's the real loss. And then people ask you the dumbest question imaginable. So, are you over them? What the fuck does that even mean? You don't stop caring about someone just because a relationship ended. Sometimes you'll always love them in some way, in some capacity. that doesn't mean you should go back. Love and compatibility are not the same thing. Missing someone isn't proof that you made the wrong decision. It proves that they mattered. Healing doesn't always look like forgetting. Sometimes healing looks like smiling when you remember them instead of crying. Sometimes healing means genuinely hoping that they find happiness, even if that happiness isn't with you. That is one of the purest forms of love there is. Wanting someone to have a beautiful life, even when you're no longer a part of it. You don't have to turn someone into a villain to justify walking away. You don't have to rewrite history. You don't have to convince yourself they were secretly awful. Sometimes the truth is much simpler. They were an amazing person. You loved them. I'll probably always care about them. But this relationship was hurting both of us. Everyone knows one of those sentences can be true, both of those sentences can be true at the same time. Life isn't always black and white. Sometimes it's painfully gray. Maybe someday your paths will cross for the first time or for the a millionth time. Maybe life changes. Maybe timing is finally right. Or maybe it doesn't. None of us ever fucking know. But you can't live your entire life waiting for a future that may never come while the present slowly breaks you. Sometimes the bravest thing two people can do is admit that love by itself isn't enough. That doesn't make the relationship a failure. It doesn't make either person a failure. Sometimes a relationship succeeds because it taught you how deeply capable you were of loving another person. Sometimes it succeeds because it shows you what respect looks like. Sometimes it succeeds because it helps you become the person you're supposed to be. Not every relationship is meant to last forever. Some are meant to change you forever. And there is a difference. If you're going through something like this right now, I hope you remember one thing. You can love someone with all your heart, respect them with everything you have, wish nothing but happiness for them, and still know that walking away is the kindest thing either of you can do. Because sometimes the greatest act of love is finally letting go before the relationship destroys two people who never, ever wanted to hurt each other in the first place.